authentic women talk about topics that help to elevate other people. And today we are talking about feeling stuck and how that is the beginning of change. Today I'm here with one of my besties,
Hello.
Jody Slain. And Jody and I have known each other for years.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked her off the ledge and she's talked me off the ledge many times.
Millions of times.
Thank God. Thank God.
That's why we're still here.
Right. Everyone has to have a friend like that,
Right.
or a few friends like that, so you don't drive one of them crazy. But Jody is a clinical therapist who's been doing clinical therapy for many years, and actually one of the smartest women that I know. She has two master's degrees. I tell everybody she's uber smart, and she is. She's witty, she's fun, she's smart. I'm so lucky to have a friend like her.
Thank you, Tam.
You're
Likewise.
welcome. Thank you. She has one degree from Cleveland State and the other one from John Carroll, and just been doing this for a long time. And I think the reason why we wanted to have you on here is because we talk about psychological topics all the time.
We're just people struggling, and since we're women, it usually comes from that direction. But
right.
When we're out and we're talking, we're essentially doing the same thing right now, is
Right.
inviting you to have dinner with us. Because
Exactly. We should have ate our nice thing. We set it aside. It was so good. But no, I mean, like, how many times do you have, deep topics, conversations with your friends? And we thought, we should be sharing this with other people because of, all the self-help books that I've read, which she teases me about all
every
the time.
self-help book ever written.
And the fact that she's actually formally trained in this stuff, we have these conversations on a regular basis. And then she goes to work and you go help people with some of the conversations that we talk about. And I go off and I do the same thing.
Right.
So we thought that we would just, have this conversation here.
And not only that, but we both have been there and we'll find ourselves there again. Life is up and down. And I think it's good when you're in a good place, help other people. When you're not such a good place, look to others to help you.
Yeah, exactly. So what's different about the way you do things? I think that you have mentioned that it's more of a friendly sort of approach. And I think that some people out there may have an idea of when you go to a therapist that you are, you're laying on a couch and they've got their glasses on and they're taking notes the whole time. But that's not really the way you do it.
No, I'm pretty casual personally. But I think that, I think therapists are trained similarly. But it's really, everyone has a different personality, and I think that's what they bring to their therapy. But for me personally, I wouldn't say I'm super technical. What I am is pretty organic, and things unfold that way. So I would say that, I'm pretty friendly, but also requiring, and I'm big on accountability.
Yeah, so you it's almost like sitting with your friend, but instead of your friend, like some of our friends let us keep doing the same bad things over and over again. Whereas you're that friend who's sitting there and you're, like you said, making people accountable.
Yeah.
And then also kind of uncovering some things that they might not be aware of.
Right.
So one of the things that you had mentioned, and you've kind of mentioned this a few times, and we both have been there. We boboth have been in a place of feeling stuck, right? It seems to
be a horrible feeling. It's like an oppressive, can't breathe, heavy weight feeling.
And when you feel stuck, I mean, it's like you can have those sensations. You can have a sense of like, nothing's ever going to change. This is my life forever. What are some other things that people maybe bring to the table?
Just that they're not good enough. That they're not good enough to make a change or strong enough on their own, or they don't know where to begin. Usually, like, the biggest issue is I don't know where to begin. That's like the hard, I'll meet with someone for the first time and I'll say, what's going on? And it's like, where do you want me to start? It's overwhelming. And when we get overwhelmed, we get paralyzed, right? And so getting someone to get moving a little bit, it just progresses. You'd be surprised what you can actually do if you bet on yourself, which I'm a big believer in.
I like that. Bet on yourself. I love that perspective. It's so positive. And it also is empowering too.
Yeah.
I mean, because sometimes when you get stuck, it's a matter of not being able to see things maybe from a different perspective. Not being able to step out of yourself, out of your situation, and understanding that you can make a change.
Right. And sometimes people don't even realize that they are stuck. It's just this feeling, and until you actually start talking about it. So that's why Tammy and I believe that when you're stuck, it is the beginning of change. Because it's kind of like for those people who don't move until their back's up against the wall and all of a sudden they figure it out, because we're very resilient, right? And if you have to, you will, kind of a thing. And that's what happens when you're stuck. When you're in enough pain, you'll start figuring out how to get unstuck.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes people try to get away from pain by using coping mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing that you try to bring to the table.
Yeah.
Like, why are you doing this? Why are you overeating? Why are you overworking? Why are you cheating on your spouse? That sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And those are just coping mechanisms to run from pain and go towards pleasure. And that's actually the worst way to try to get unstuck. Actually, it actually perpetuates that.
Oh, right.
stuckness.
It keeps you, and you're behind then.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're really behind the 8 ball, because then you've got the original problem and then the
Right.
problem you created with your solution,
Mm-hmm.
which wasn't a solution. But what I've talked to Tammy about, and I think you can agree, or at least more for me. Now, Tammy's one of the bravest people that I know.
Aw, thank you.
You're welcome. And I've told you this before.
Thank you.
She really inspired me to think in a different way, even for myself, right? And I noticed that I have a tendency to let fear hold me back, and I know I'm not alone. You know?
Yeah. Well, when you're feeling stuck, when you're
Right.
it's really fear. You brought that up earlier when we were talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
It's the fear of, like you were saying, not being good enough, not being smart enough. Maybe acceptance if you're changing a job, or acceptance if you're going to do something outside of what your family wants you to do.
Right.
Rejection, that's another pain point, right? There's a lot of reasons why people may not kind of do that. And when they're sitting there with you, you're uncovering these blocks, and you're making people aware of that. And once they have an awareness, then they can have a whole new perspective on their problem. And then it doesn't seem so scary. You're facing your demons.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's no matter what problem people bring to me, I usually always ask the question, well, what are you afraid of?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's usually something there, right? Especially, and this is just a personal, issue for me, that I hate to see people stuck in a job, or I think that's so common, and afraid to move from it, right? I know I dealt with that on a personal level, so I feel like it's like my mission to make sure everyone knows that they can change that, right? But what's the biggest fear factor with that? Which is, why are you staying at a job that, say, you hate, and you hate every day, and you feel sick to your stomach every morning, and you're crabby every night? Then why are you there, right? We all need a paycheck. But what's keeping you stuck there? Fear of, well, what if this is the best I can do?
Right.
What if no one else will want me? What if I can't do anything else?
What if
That's
it's
all fear.
worse?
Right.
At the place that I go to,
Right.
worse is where I'm at now.
Right.
And then another thing, and we both have kind of experienced this, is sometimes the psychology of the space permeates your own psyche. And when that happens, if it's a toxic environment, then you start thinking in a toxic way.
Right.
And if that's counterintuitive to who you are as a person, that just kind of exacerbates that whole sense of feeling stuck. Like, there's a diminishment. There are environments out there that are in this, again, we've kind of, I think most people have had this experience at some point in time in their life, where that toxic psychology permeates your being, and then you literally are diminished on such a regular basis, gaslit, there's passive aggressiveness, whatever might be going on in that environment. And the challenge is that it almost like weakens you, and you don't feel empowered, and you feel fragile, and you feel like you can't step out and make a change, because the people that you're around, this toxic environment, has kind of made it out like you're not capable.
Right.
So
mission accomplished. That's what they set out to do, and they've done it, right? And Tammy, you're right too, which is, like, we all need our friends, and misery loves company, and especially in a workplace, we all complain about the same things, and we feel better because we're aligned with other people's suffering, so to speak. But at a certain point, that becomes something that's holding you back. Right? And it's scary. Like, maybe risky people, places, and things applies to other things besides just substance abuse, which is, am I surrounding myself with people who have done it and who I can learn from and who are brave, or am I surrounding myself with other people who are just as scared as I am?
Right. And when you make the change, there's some positive things that can happen, and we'll talk about the steps to making a change, but if you can get past the fear of what if it doesn't turn out, or what if I'm not good enough, and instead start to see a different perspective of what if there's a better environment out there, and what if I'm not being acknowledged for my strengths and not being able to use my strengths. Like, wow, what an empowering space. And then you start envisioning, like, well, if you were using your skill sets, and you were able to demonstrate what your strengths were, and you were in a supportive environment, like, how much better would your life be?
Right. And then when you finally, if you've been someone who's been in a position where you're somewhere stuck, unhappy, and then you get out, that is why you want to make it a personal cause, like I do.
Right.
You know what I mean? It wasn't something I was born to. I just came upon me. Like, I've been there, and if I had, it's always, if I'd only known, right? And we've both been there.
Right.
And we've both gotten out. And so now we want to help other people who are in that spot know that they can get out. It's not impossible. So that's what I mean, like, by betting on yourself. At the end of the day, you're going to have to, and it's going to be worth it. You're better off betting on yourself, even if you make a bad decision.
Right. And the other thing too is that when you do it and you make the change and your life gets better, you look back and you kind of go, why did I wait so long? But that's why people like Jody, that's why you do what you do. And this whole kind of life coaching thing is really a passion for you because, it's different from the clinical setting, because the clinical setting, you're focusing on mental health issues, you're focusing on some really heavy stuff, maybe addictions of all kinds. And what you're doing here with Vedas is a little bit different in the sense that you are focusing on life coaching and helping people to get unstuck. And we'll talk about a lot of other topics. She's going to be a regular moving forward, and we're going to talk about all these really kind of life impactful topics that you are kind of bringing out of that clinical setting with all of your tool sets, and then teaching people how to make changes.
Right. There's definitely a theme as a human being, right? And we're all just trying to live peacefully, right? That's the goal. So I think that Tammy's right. We have a lot of life stuff to talk about.
I like that. So we should probably talk about, like, what are some of the steps to at least start initiating change? And people do these things already. It's part of the process. Anytime anyone's ever made a change, they just may not recognize them. And I think that if we can share, what they are and people can recognize, then maybe they can get through that change more quickly instead of like looking back and going, oh, why did I stay there so long? So the first step in the process is the pre-contemplative phase. And do you want to talk about the pre-contemplative phase?
I mean, I think, and you're right, we're organically doing these things whether we have a clinical name or tied to them or not, just as people, right? When you start thinking, I don't like this. I am not happy. This is not working for me. When you go every day and go, I can't do this anymore, those kind of things, you're thinking, this is not okay, right? But you haven't put action to it. So to me, that's like pre-contemplative, like, I'm going to have to change this at some point in some way, right?
Yep. There's a book that I read years ago, and it's a teeny tiny book. You could read it in 15 minutes, and it's called The Truth About You. But to your point, it basically, he said you could be the best Olympic athlete in the world, but if you practically puke getting out of bed in the morning, you're not invigorated, you're fatigued, you don't look forward to going and swimming laps, even though you're the number one in the world, then you shouldn't be doing it. And if there's something else that you're thinking about doing, and maybe that's to go volunteer at, to help puppies, because I know you love puppies.
I was waiting for the APL to come in there. There's a plug for APL.
Okay, exactly. And maybe that's what really makes you jump out of bed in the morning. And you're so excited and invigorates you, then that's a key indicator of that's what you should be doing. So during that pre-contemplative phase, maybe you're not super aware, but you're becoming aware that you're unhappy and there's a lot of pain. So start thinking about what brings you pleasure, and that kind of leads us into that contemplative phase. Right.
And I also want to add one thing to that, which is I understand that some things aren't fiscally possible, right? So I'm not sitting here saying, and neither is Tammy, just follow everything that you might. We do still need to earn a living, and I get that. But there is a cost-benefit analysis to things, right? But the next stage would be contemplative, which makes sense, right? Then you're really thinking about, okay, this does need to change. This isn't a question anymore. And I'm ready for a change, right?
Yeah.
And that's where some of the decision-making comes in, which leads to, the action stage. Explain the action stage.
Yeah, and in preparation to the action stage too, right?
Yeah.
So you start preparing. So say you're going on a diet, right? And then and in order to go on a diet, you got to get rid of all the junk food out of your house. So you're prepared by getting rid of it, and then you got to go to the grocery store, and then you buy all the healthy stuff, and then you bring it home. And this is her example, by the way, not mine, just because I was in health and wellness for years. And you bring all the good stuff home, and then you start planning and prepping, and now you're into that action phase. So they go hand in hand. You're prepping, and then you're also taking action. Right.
And I think where the life coaching might come in, to be honest with you, is after the action stage. Because I think we feel really good when we make the plan and we act on it. I have seen I just saw a lady sorry if you see this, but it was a good interaction, but she was ahead of me in line at the grocery store, and she had every snack. I wanted to go home with her. She had every snack. I asked if I could go home with her, but she told me she had every snack food you can possibly imagine, and she said, she's like, this is my last night. By the way, it was like 8 o'clock, so I don't know what PM. I don't know what her plan was, but she said, it's my last night to eat everything I want to eat tonight, and I'm starting a fast the next day. And my thought was, I wish her well, but my thought was, haven't we all been there, right? She was like elated, happy. She was finally doing something, but I'm really wondering what happened the next day.
Right, and she was kind of self-sabotaging before she took that big, next action step, which is funny. But you mentioned something earlier, and I think it's a great point that in that action stage, a lot of times people beat themselves up for not being perfect.
Yeah.
And you said that, even if somebody buys and eats one apple, but they eat pizza the rest of the day, at least they ate the apple as one action step. It doesn't have to be massive overhaul change. And a lot of people beat themselves up if they're not absolutely perfect. Well, I'm not perfect. And then you're not going to stay on the track to change if you're constantly diminishing yourself, beating yourself down. You have to be that your friend, your own friend. I usually use the term cheerleader, but Jody uses the term friend.
You have to be your own friend, because if your friend told you that story, you would say, good job, it's okay. But if you did it, you'd be berating yourself. But it's important to, I think, and I tell this to my clients all the time, and even people that in this life coaching environment, lean into what works for you. So I'm really hesitant to just give direction about do this, do this, do this, do this. You know who you are, and you know your habits. And I think if you lean into who you are and do some inventory, you're going to be more successful in the choices that you make. What works for Tammy, I promise you, would not work for me. She's really strict and she's just all about it, right? But I have to do things in my own way with my own goals. So I think it's good to listen to who you are and what works for you.
Absolutely. And then you get to the maintenance stage, right? So, inspiration is great. When you're inspired, you're motivated, you're doing it, you're, 100%, on top of things. But then there's a point where some of that energy starts to dissipate. And this is where people fall in trouble, where they, maybe they start having more pizza and less apples, when they've been eating mostly apples or something like that. And as Jody had mentioned, this is a good time when you get that friend, that strategic friend, coach, whatever you want to name them. That's kind of what you do. I mean, we were trying to tell people, we were trying to think of what did we tell people that you are? And, really she's a friend. When you have a conversation with Jody in the clinical setting or in this coaching setting, it's very friend-like, it's brainstorming-like. And even though you feel like you're having this truly organic, flowing conversation, in her mind, she's figuring things out, and then she's directing the flow of the conversation and helping you to get there, right? So it's, you're a therapist, you're a friend, you're a life coach.
I'm an accountability person too, which is huge, right? So people generally, follow suit when they have to be accountable. I've had people say to me before, well, I knew that we were meeting. You know what I mean? So I took care of this. I don't really think I'm scary, but apparently there's some kind of fear factor here. But having someone to be accountable who's not there to beat you up, but to just say, okay, that was good. So that's the whole point is we tend to just give up if we fail, even in a small way. It's not a failure if we're still trying to work towards something. And it's hard. It's not easy to make changes. It's not easy to bet on yourself and believe in yourself, but it is possible.
Right. Baby steps, and you have to pat yourself every step of the way. And I went through this too. I through bad habits of, unhealthy environments, I used to beat myself up internally. And we talk about that internal parent that's inside of us. And many of us have it. And that internal parent will a lot of times berate us internally, like you were saying, always point out what we're doing that's not right. But instead, you've got to kind of shift gears and be that internal friend, that internal coach, that internal angel to say, hey, this you did good. And just change that internal dialogue. And that's what's going to help to keep you moving in the right direction.
Right. What else did we talk about, Tammy, too, was just like how we don't even think to make a change when we don't like something, right? The simplest things, like we were talking about, just a joke about listening to the radio and a song comes on.
Right.
This has happened to me more times than I care to admit, but I'm listening and thinking how much I don't like this song. I'm just waiting for it to be over, and it doesn't even occur to me to just change the station, right? And I realize we do that in life, too. We just go about our business, and it doesn't occur to us that we actually do have choices, and bouncing it off of somebody else when they say, okay, but you do, and what are some of your other options? Have you thought about this?
Right.
And you'd be surprised that, as corny as this sounds, I really do think, and I believe this, that the answers are within us. You know, and more than often than not, we just don't trust ourselves, or we need someone else to say, yeah, that's a good idea, right? But you know you better than anybody, better than I would know you. You're the expert on you. But it's believing in yourself, and what are you afraid of, I think, are the two main things that a life coach would really be helpful in.
You touched upon a really important point, and I know that we'll be tying this up soon, but the important point that you stated is that we don't trust ourselves. So there's a dichotomy that sometimes happens for some people in life due to a variety of reasons. And the dichotomy is that we have this like innate knowing, right? This innate ability to go with the flow and listen to our gut and pay attention to the emotions that we're feeling and know what we should be doing and what changes that we should make. But then there's also this other part of ourselves. It's almost like a trained part, like socially or from our, friend circles. In the book, The Truth About You, he talks about how sometimes people make decisions in their careers, in their life, based upon their family pressure, right? Their friend pressure. Like, everyone else thinks I should be doing this, so I should be doing this.
Right.
And so that creates this dichotomy of where we're not connected to ourselves, we're not trusting ourselves, we're not listening to ourselves. So I think that was a really important point, that in order to do that, sometimes you have to, work with somebody, quiet down, listen, and then re-establish that connection. It's almost like the holding pattern with a parent. They talk about, babies have a holding parent with their mother. And if that's disrupted, or if you don't have that safe space where you can really kind of be yourself, then creating that same safe space with someone like yourself is key, so that people can talk and feel safe that they're making good decisions.
Maybe that's learned behavior, not to trust ourselves, right? Maybe something for another day for us to investigate. But babies seem fearless to me.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. I like that.
That's why we pat everything, right? Because they're fearless. Either they have no sense, or they trust themselves. I don't know which one it is, but I think it's, so did we learn not to trust ourselves?
Yeah. Ooh, okay. We'll tune in for the next one, because I think that's the direction that we might be going. But if you want to get in contact with Jody, she's going to be working with the Vedas Living community. So you'll be able to reach her right from the Vedas Living website and start working with her. If you're stuck, there's no reason to stay there. If you can't figure out why you keep repeating the same patterns in your life, then she's the girl that you want to work with, and she's fun. Believe you me.
Thanks, Sammy. Hope to see you soon.
Don't forget to follow our YouTube channel and like our social media sites, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.